Mr. Harper has starred in the HBO movie Lackawanna Blues, based on the critically acclaimed stage play by Ruben Santiago Hudson. Prior to CSI New York, Harper co-starred as an ambitious undercover FBI operative on the CBS series The Handler. The role earned him a 2004 Golden Satellite Award nomination for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series. He has also been recognized by the NAACP Image Awards with a nomination as Best Supporting Actor for his performance in the CBS series City of Angels. Harper received critical acclaim for his performance in the independent film The Visit, directed by Jordan Walker Perman, which tells the story of two brothers who are forced to come together when the younger sibling, played by Harper, who is HIV positive, is sentenced to death row for a crime he seemingly did not commit. His performance, which Daily Variety called riveting, earned him a Best Actor nomination by the Independent Spirit Awards. Harper's other screen credits are numerous and include Loving Jezebel, The Nephew with Pierce Brosnan, The Skulls with Joshua Jackson, In Too Deep with Omar Epps, LL Cool J and Nia Long, Beloved, Have Plenty, He Got Game with Denzel Washington, and Spike Lee's Get on the Bus. Other films include Zoo Man with Louis Gossett Jr. and Charles S. Dutton, and One Red Rose, which he also co-wrote for Showtime. Harper's stage credits are also numerous and include appearances in off-Broadway productions of Your Handsome Captain, Freeman, and David Mamet's American Buffalo. Recently, People magazine selected Harper as one of their sexiest men alive. For which none of you are here to hear him today. What you may not know and what folks tend to overlook is Harper graduated magna cum laude and was a valedictorian of his class. From Brown University with a Bachelor's of Arts degree. He then graduated with a law degree, cum laude, from Harvard Law School, and then graduated with a Master's in Public Administration from the Kennedy School of Government, also from Harvard. In his book, Letters to a Young Brother, Manifest Your Destiny, which is why we really are here tonight, Harper offers inspiration to young men clamoring for advice and encouragement at a time when popular culture and the unending search for identity through material wealth offers little positive guidance. While most people associate Mr. Harper with Hollywood, few know that he is just as comfortable in a school auditorium rousing groups of students with his unique style of real-life wisdom. Having addressed thousands of high school and middle school students over the years, Hill is ready to take his message to an even wider audience. One last thing I will let you know is that Mr. Harper has established the Manifest Your Destiny Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that facilitates the pairing of successful, positive role models with underserved youth and provides scholarship, grant, and internship opportunities. I am honored and proud to present to you this remarkable brother. Please give him a warm welcome to Mr. Hill Harper.
Thank you very much. I think it's always, if this thing keeps feeding back, let me see here, maybe we can turn it down a little bit. Can you hear me? Okay, if you can't hear me, let me know. I'll speak with my theater voice, if that helps. You know, I was doing a play with Felicia Rashad, and who I love, by the way. And, you know, she speaks like this, much like CCH Pounder. She says, hello, Hill, how are you? And I say, where did you get that voice from? You're from, like, Kansas City, Missouri. You sound like Madonna. And she said, well, you know, I'm from the theater. I said, okay. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, Philadelphia. And what I want to talk about for a little while is since my book's been out since April, there are certain things I've been talking about since I've been going around. But more specifically, since it is Parents' Weekend, I wanted to talk about relationships. I wanted to talk about family. And I wanted to talk about how we are interconnected and how the importance of that connection can oftentimes shape our journeys. And as we look at where we're going or where we want to go or the idea we have for the type of life that we want to live, we have to think about the connections to, number one, who we surround ourselves with, and to whom we are connected, whether it be through family, whether it be through choice, through relationships, through dating, etc. The third letter of my book, in the book, is a letter that is about being raised by a single parent. I was raised by a single parent, and that's letter number 3. Who here, by the way, has actually seen the book or read the book already? So a few people. Is there anybody who actually remembers the third letter, being raised by a single parent? Is there something about that anybody remembers? Sure.
Well, I was raised by a single parent as well, so it resonated with me.
Okay,
I was raised by my mom.
You were raised by your mother, okay. And what's interesting about that is that, I mean, you don't need me to talk about the data, the statistics, the fact that 2/3 of our young people are being raised by single mothers right now. The fact that young men, by and large, particularly young African-American men, by and large, don't have individuals who are older male role models that they can look to because many of their fathers are not in the home. And many of us who are black men, who are adults, are not taking the time to reach outside of our nucleus to actually reach out to the young brothers that don't have fathers in the home. And so what happens, it creates this perpetual cycle. But you all are way ahead of me on that. You don't need me to talk about the data, talk about the fact that in Baltimore City schools, not much unlike Philadelphia City schools, the graduation rate for young African-American men is somewhere around 26%. That means we're looking at a 74% failure rate. And we all know that if we're in any other type of system in this country, if a business was experiencing a 74% failure rate, it would be shut down. If you were serving food that had a 74% failure rate, you'd be out of business. However, we continue to allow school systems to function and supposedly educate our youth without actually picketing the schools, boycotting the schools, and saying, you have to figure out a different methodology to educate us because the way you're doing it now isn't working. But you all already knew that. I don't got to talk about that. But if we really knew it, why are we allowing it to continue? Is it because we're able to afford to put your kid in the magnet school or the private school, and then therefore maybe you have a competitive advantage for your child, so you really don't care? Because that's what the individuals that can afford private school are doing, at least the ones I know. But that's probably not the story about you all. You know, this is a self-selected group, right? But talking about family, talking about relationships, on the back of my book there's an excerpt, and I'm going to read a bit of this excerpt as kind of a jumping off point. It is from letter number 3, being raised by a single parent. And it reads, "Dear young brother, it might seem easier to close your eyes and ears and act like you're just passing time, but you're not. Your life's not. It might seem easier to ignore the fact that the choices for your life are yours to make, but get this, as many times I've read this, I'm having trouble following it now. But get this, not making any choices is making a choice." How many of us sit back and say, I don't know what I really want or how I want to go about doing something, so I'm just going to sit here and wait, rather than really actively listening to our intuition and to the intuitive voices that we all have and say, I'm going to make an affirmative choice, but be malleable enough to, if that choice maybe leads us in a direction that may not be the best, we can make a different choice. And as we put one foot in front of the other, we're able to make different choices down a journey or a path, rather than being stagnant and waiting for life to make choices for us. But get this, not making any choices is making a choice. So why not make a choice to be active in your life? That means choosing to deal with what's going on in your life today. Commit to being an active architect of your own life and to turning your dreams into reality. For me, that means waking up every morning, getting on my knees, thanking God for a blessing of another day, whispering the commitment to live this day to its fullest. I commit to live each day fully, each minute, each second, one day at a time. If you make this kind of commitment on a daily basis, then eventually they will stack up to be an amazing string of very cool seconds, minutes, and days, and that can become an unreasonably happy lifetime. And there's 2 things I want to talk to you about right now. I want to talk to you about a line here that says, being an active architect of your own life. And the other is the idea of unreasonable happiness. Let's talk about being an active architect first. I want you guys to, I feel kind of stuck behind this podium, so I want you guys to roll with me for a second and talk with me, please, and help me answer some of these questions. Who here is an architect or study architecture? Okay, it's a tough crowd. I thought that maybe someone's going to be able to help me out with this little analogy I was going to spin. But now let's just keep it real rudimentary. Let's break it down. Tell me this. You all are a smart crowd. What's the first thing? Okay, can we all agree, first of all, that if you're going to think about what an architect does or creates in terms of a structure, we would all agree that their dream or their goal would be to create a certain structure. We can agree on that. Okay. So with that as an agreed upon jumping off point, what is the first thing that an architect does to create their dream? A plan, or what's another word? Blueprint. A blueprint, right? Okay. If the first thing an architect does to create their dream or a plan is a blueprint, what's the first thing they use in creating that blueprint? A pencil. Who said that? You said that? How old are you? 11-year-old is smarter than all y'all. Now that's going to prove a later point I'm going to make that has to do with the first chapter of my book, which is called You, the Newest Perfect Model. She's clearly the newest perfect model. She's the latest evolution of the human species right here. And the latest happens to be the greatest. They're quicker, faster, smarter, have more access to more technology than all of us ever had. Right? So they can be greater than we can be. They can go further. However, it relies on something we're going to talk about in a minute. So we'll all agree that the first thing an architect's going to use to create their dream is a blueprint. They're going to use a pencil first because why? They may make mistakes, but what? Sometimes you have to make modifications to your original plan because certain things come up that you didn't expect in your original plan, right? So let's all take 1 second. I know many of you all aren't very narcissistic, so just take 1 second. Think about yourself. Don't think about your parents, your brothers, your sisters, your kids, your teachers, the advertisers. Think about yourself and think about your dreams and what they are. Your dreams. Because I believe this, and many of y'all may disagree with me, and when it comes time in Q&A and you want to call me names, it's happened before, you can call me a liar. But most of us in this room, and some of us will say, well, that's not me. But I will put out this proclamation. Most of us in this room are not living our life. We're living somebody else's life. But it's not ours. It could be the life that our parents want us to live, or if we're adults and our parents are already deceased, what our deceased parents want us to live. Or maybe it's the life that our kids want us to live. Or maybe it's the life that an advertiser is telling us to live because we need those shoes that they told us to have. Or maybe it's the life that our friends want us to live. Or maybe it's the life that our girlfriend or boyfriend or husband, wife want us to live. But is it ours? Is it your life? So what are your true dreams, yours for real? Think about those. And then think about a blueprint or a plan about how we're going to go from, what's the name of this room? Tuttleman. How are we going to go from this seat on a Saturday evening in Tuttleman to where that is? The true dream that you have for your life, the vision that you have for who you are and how you are going to manifest your destiny. Okay? So we have a blueprint. Once we have a blueprint, and we're all going to agree, hopefully y'all agree with me, that, the land is us, okay, in our little analogy that we're weaving. The land is us, so don't answer land when I ask you the next question. What is the next thing after this architect has committed his plan to ink, created the blueprint, has an idea of this structure that he wants to or she wants to create? What's the next thing that they're going to do on the land? What are they going to do? Start to build a foundation. How old are you? 12, the newest perfect model right here. They're going to start to build a foundation, okay? And now I will suggest, and someone can argue with me, I will suggest that the size and the thickness of your foundation has to be in direct proportion to the size and thickness of your dream. But many of us don't think that way. Many of us say we have these big dreams and big goals and all these things we're going to do, but we do not build the foundation that's in accordance to that size. that will hold up that dream. So oftentimes our dreams will implode upon themselves. And what do we do as we go through life? Now some of our, I went to the Delta National Convention and I was signing books and they said, let the deer go first. And I was like, who's the deer? And they said, well, that's the senior members of the Deltas or something like that. And I said, so some of you deers out there, men and women deers, this applies to you right here, because oftentimes we'll find that we may start out with big dreams when we're younger, but as we mature and we start to realize that we did not develop this thickness and size of the foundation to hold up our dreams, what do? Instead of going back and building that foundation back up, we start to make our dreams smaller. You see? So over time, our dreams are smaller. So if you're an architect and your dream is to build this building, this beautiful building, which is a large building, right? I bet you if we could unearth this floor, you'd see the foundation is incredibly thick, because this is a big, heavy structure. Now, if this architect had a dream to build this building, but they didn't build a foundation that can support it, and all they could put up was like one of those little shacks and Little House on the Prairie, wouldn't that person feel unfulfilled over time? They'd still have a structure, but they had deflated their dream because their foundation could not hold up the greatness of their dream. And then what do they often do? They transfer. They do what they call dream transference to who? Their kids. And so the kids not only have their dreams, but they got to deal with the weight and size of your dream that you couldn't fulfill. So what happens is that they end up trying to live your life and not their own, and they don't do very well at either. So over time, we can see how dreams come into play, and in particular, fears. I call fear false evidence appearing real. And part of the reason why I'm here is because I'm part of the entertainment business. And what I started to notice as I was speaking to young men, young women, and our young people, is that the business that I was a part of was effectively destroying the self-esteem of our youth. Because of what? Because it was creating false evidence that appears real. That's the whole business. That's what we do now. We create false evidence that appears real, and what does it do? It leads to people wanting things that aren't real. So, I have a little brother in the Big Brother program. When he's 9 years old, he's 14 now. When he was 9, he looked up at me and said, Hill, I can't be happy unless I have a platinum Rolex and a Bentley with 20-inch rims. That's a 9-year-old. That's the way he was actualizing his happiness. Now, don't get me wrong. I have nothing against nice things. I think nice things are great. If you read my book, I love nice things. However, I only believe in nice things if you don't have to go into debt to have them. If you can actually pay for them, it's fine. But what's so interesting about it is 99% of music videos we see, you see this person getting out of a car, they don't own that car, it's rented for the video. Who's seen the show MTV Cribs? Okay, 80% of the houses on that show, the person doesn't own. There's a person paid by the show to be an interior designer, to come in and make their house. They'll rent the house for you if you want. Because it's more important for them to have a celebrity on the show. They can make a house quick. They have set designers and people who can do that very quickly. It's false evidence appearing real. We have eating disorders in this country among young women, trying to emulate a picture that they see that has been photoshopped and cut and cropped by a computer. You can't have that body because that body doesn't exist. It's false evidence appearing real. So you can see how that can create insanity in people. You start wanting something that doesn't actually exist. Particularly if you're a member of a cultural group or a race of people that has been taught to feel less about themselves anyway, so they feel like they need more to feel better, to prop up their self-esteem and their self-worth. So that's why the self-worth piece to me is so important, particularly for our youth, because how can you start talking about the HIV epidemic? How can you start talking about the value of education and foundation building? How can you start talking about having a positive and valuable relationship to money and the way you deal with money? Because all of these are future-based activities and ideas. And if you don't feel that you're worthy of a future, then what do you care about whether the girl gets pregnant or not? It doesn't matter. What do you care if you commit a crime? Because it doesn't matter. The consequences don't matter because you don't feel that you're worthy. And so I felt it was incumbent upon me to spend time figuring out how I could use whatever modicum of platform or voice that I had to counteract that. Because I had to look at myself in the mirror and say, if I'm benefiting in any way from an industry that is involved in this activity, I need to use the same power and influence the industry gives me to try to counteract it. And hopefully, if I do it effectively, it will show others who have even a bigger voice than I do that they can do the same. I've had arguments with Sean Combs, Diddy, before about this very issue. Because I say, Sean, how come you don't ever talk about the fact that you spent 2.5 years at Howard University? How come you don't ever talk about the fact that after you left Howard, you went to Andre Harrell at Uptown Records and said, I will work for you for free because I want to learn this skill. Read this. Now listen, this is where we're going here. That's foundation building in a specific area. He had a blueprint or a plan. He was at Howard. He learned some things. At Howard, he realized, okay, they don't have a great music producing program. I want to learn to be a producer. I've already learned the things I've needed to learn at Howard organizationally. So let me go be a producer. Bill Gates, same thing, dropped out of school. He realized he had learned the things he needed to learn in college. He had an idea about a type or template of a business that he needed to go out and do. So he left college. So foundation building is not just education in terms of the classroom. Foundation building, and the apprentice idea is something that we've really lost sight of and track of. It's a powerful way. And people talk to me and say, well, what can I do? I don't have any money. I'm not that good in school. I don't have any. You can be an apprentice. There's very few people who will refuse free work. And you will learn. And so Sean Combs did that very thing. He worked for Andre Harrell for free for 2.5 years, getting him coffee. But he let him stay in the studio. He learned how to toggle a switch. He built up a trusting relationship. And Uptown Records and Andre Harrell started giving him their artists that they kind of didn't care about. Just work with him at night and do this. And he continued to learn and grow. So his talent base and his foundation grew. Okay? Are we all in agreement that those types of things work and they happen? Okay, good. But what he doesn't talk about, and this is the shame of it all, he doesn't use his voice to talk about that journey because it's much better and cooler to say, I went from the corner to the limo overnight. It's a Paris Hilton idea of living life right now. The idea being, I'm anointed. My last name is Hilton, so even though I have no talent, I can represent myself as being famous or talented at something. You don't know what. It's the Paris Hilton idea of living. But it didn't start with her. It's Princess Diana. We all want to win the lotto. We want to be anointed as if we were born into it. But it's about the journey. That's why I laugh when folks ask me, well, when did you get discovered? There is no day of discovery. It's a day of journey. Each day. So that foundation piece that we built is key to holding up this dream that we may have. What's the next step? We got our foundation to the size and thickness that we believe is appropriate for the size of our dreams and goals. What's the next step that we're going to do in creating our structure? What's going to attach itself to the foundation? Who? Materials. Who? Walls. Support. What's another word? Framework. Who said that? Framework. Okay. See that? See, there's some other models that are vintage that are still working well. I'm serious. I had a 59 Corvette that drives as good as my new car. And that's what they call a classic vintage model. The framework. So that's the case. So we need a framework. And I will suggest to you that the framework in terms of creating our life, creating our dreams, the way we want it to look, has everything to do with the choices that we make. Because we all know that you can have as much education or training you want in whatever area. If you make poor choices, you won't ultimately achieve your dream or your goal. Quick example. Wednesday night, I was invited to dinner with former President Bill Clinton in Los Angeles. It was a United Negro College Fund event. He raised, along with Bush, the Katrina Relief Fund. I own a hotel in New Orleans, and he raised, with Bush, I think 130 million. And a lot of HBCUs were hard hit in that Katrina belt. You had Tougaloo and Jackson, you have Southern, you have a lot of different HBCUs that were very hard hit. And we all know that their endowments aren't like Brown, UPenn, Harvard, all of that. So how do you recover from that type of devastation? And you got to understand that nearly 80% of our PhDs come out of HBCUs. So if we lose the HBCUs, we're still not doing too well on the PhD side of the ball. And if we lose them, we're going to be hurt. Okay? So supporting the HBCUs is important, whether you went there or not. I didn't go to one, but I still support it. It's very important. And so did this dinner, and I had never really met him before, and I'd certainly never been around him in an intimate dinner, and I was amazed by how brilliant he was, how knowledgeable he was with issues, how he could talk about different things in an extremely elegant, eloquent way, how he had insight into issues that were international, domestic. I mean, I was amazed. But you look back at his legacy, and he made some bad choices, and one in particular. And it's amazing how someone so intelligent can make such a poor choice. So choices, framework, is key to your structure, to your legacy. Because you could be the smartest cat in the room and make poor choices, or one really poor choice, and it all can implode. So in this case, we're looking at this building. Our framework is here. It's kind of hidden behind the walls, but there's a pillar there, obviously, a pillar there. There's one back there. There'd be matching pillars here, and some cross joints here. And that's actually what's holding up this big structure. It's not the walls in between. It's the actual framework. And the choices that we make in our life have to do with specific realities. Quick example, I have two homes. I have a home in Los Angeles and a home in New York. One is brick, one's wood in terms of framework. Which is which and why? Yeah.
Brick, New York, because in California it crumbles.
Why would it crumble? Earthquakes. Okay, good. It's also cold in New York, so brick is a better insulating material. But what's interesting about that is that the architect, because both houses are roughly the same size, so roughly the same ceiling height, so the blueprints are similar, foundations are similar size to hold up the same type of house, but it's two different materials. And you're absolutely right. In LA, when the ground moves, brick is a very unforgiving material, but it's really good since it is unforgiving with weather and wind and all those things. And sometimes in our life's journey, we have to be very rigid and extremely disciplined and actually bury through the problems and obstacles that come. But other times in our life, to have a successful structure, we have to be more malleable and be able to move and give to be a successful structure. And that's what wood gives us. And those of you who own your home now know that there are these disclosure laws. So when you buy a house, you have to disclose things. In my case, in LA, my house had a brick fireplace. In '95, the quake came, that fireplace fell down. But the rest of the house stood up. And when I purchased the house, they had to disclose that to me. And I said, that's a shame. The brick, it fell down. And the owner of the house said, yeah, it wasn't that bad, though. I said, why? He said, well, just think if the whole house was brick, it would have been real bad. And that's the point. If the architect would have made a poor choice, then the whole house would have imploded. Even though the blueprint was perfect, the foundation was perfect, and all that, poor choices can affect the result. Last question I'm going to ask real quick, and whoever answers this right is going to get some type of prize. And listen, you got to answer it first. Now, I'm about to say something that okay. Last Sunday, I was invited to play Celebrity Jeopardy for charity. It was hard. Not because I didn't know the answer, okay? It was because of the buzzer, okay? And what people don't understand is that they don't open the buzzer until after Alex finishes the question. Okay? So even if you know the answer, you could be pushing the button, but they don't open the buzzer till he finishes the question. There's a guy sitting there, he finishes the question. There's a guy sitting there who waits a second and then, opens it up. What they tell you in prepping for the show, wait till the lights come on, and whoever hits the buzzer first gets to answer the question, right? The lights, you don't see it at home, but lights come on next to the box, right? And that's when the buzzers are open. That's what they tell you to do. So during the first segment of the show, well, first of all, when they invited me to do it, I thought I'd be going up against Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey or something like that. You know what I'm saying? But you know who they put me up against? They said, well, we looked at your education, so we put you up against Margaret Spellings, the Secretary of Education, and Michael McKeon, who, if you ever saw Laverne and Shirley, it was Lenny from Laverne and Shirley. He's a nerd. He doesn't even act anymore. All he does is stay home and study trivia. So he had won Jeopardy the past couple years on Celebrity Jeopardy. He also won their Rock and Roll Jeopardy. So I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I was like, I know I can beat Jessica Simpson. But this is crazy. So, but I still, I was gonna go out there because I knew, at Brown and Harvard, those of you who are here, you're not really taught trivia, you're taught how to be a critical thinker, but I still figured I knew a couple things. I'd go out there and no other, there's not a lot of black folks that ever go on Jeopardy. So I felt like I had to really represent. I felt like I was carrying all black people on my shoulders. So I knew I had to do it, and I was pumped up. Okay. Now I want to tell the truth. What happened? So the first segment goes, they said we're going to, we play, regular Jeopardy until there's a commercial, then he talks to you. I don't know if you've seen the show, but it's the same thing. And this is a Radio City Music Hall, so there's 5,000 people there. We're on the stage. And I know the answers. The questions weren't hard like regular Jeopardy. They had dumbed them down for Celebrity Jeopardy. I knew the answers. So I was like, my God, these answers are easy. So every time I hit the thing, and I couldn't get in. And Michael McKeon, every time, was answering the question. So every time I was hitting the thing, and I couldn't understand what was going on. And so, this is for charity, so the commercial break comes, and I walk down, and I say, I walk down to him. He was in the Champions, thing. That's the one way on the right. I say, what's going on? How are you doing this? He said, how do you do this? He said, well, I have a system. I said, well, what is it? He said, I'll tell you after the show. I said, man, this is for charity. He said, I know, my charity. I was like, I didn't know Lenny had a foundation. But, okay, so I kept playing. I got more and more frustrated, more and more upset as the game went on. And this is serious. I'm serious. I was upset because I knew the answers. If I didn't know the answers, I would not be as upset because I'd be like, he's beating me. But I knew the answers. They even asked the question. Listen to this question. They said, it's a 1970s TV show, and they were moving on up. I was like, I got it. And he got it. Right? So something was going on. But it speaks to life. If you don't get in the game, you can't win the game. And we all know that there are institutional structures that are created to keep us out of the game. However, we have to figure out ways to get into the game. And for me, it took to the point where I was so frustrated, for real, by the end of the show, because I put all this on me going into the show, but how I was representing us and I was doing all this, and I couldn't get into the game. So he had like $35,000, I had $2,000. And they said, well, it's Final Jeopardy time. And I was so upset. You know what I did? Because they make you bet how much you're going to bet before they give you the question. I put 0 because I was obstinate and upset. Because I was like, no matter, even if I double my money, I can't catch him. This is BS. I don't care about Jeopardy. It's ridiculous. I checked out of the game. You see how that can happen? You get hit with so many obstacles, and you're like, it's not about me. There's something institutional. Something's going on that I don't understand. I can't get in the game. I'm going to just check out. And the problem with that is that he could have bet $30,000, all of his money, and lost because maybe he wanted $60,000 for his charity. You don't know what other people are going to do, and if you check out of the game, there's no way you can win. At least if you participate and keep doing your best, eventually there will be some measure of a breakthrough. And then maybe you'll play another game, maybe it'll be Celebrity Bid Whist, and I'll come on and get him, you know. But you can't check out of the game. I did. Checked out. So they asked the question, came up, and it said, I'm trying to word it correctly, but basically it was like, it's the 1962 film whose premiere happened in this building, based on the book written by Harper Lee. To Kill a Mockingbird. I knew the answer, but I even talked myself out of knowing the answer. I did, because I was so angry. I wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, and I was like, that's probably wrong. This game's horrible. So when Alex came to me, he said, Hill, how much did you bet? Or no, they show the answer first. They say, did you get it right? I said, I don't even know, Alex. I was pissed. He read it. I had scribbled it kind of like Dr. Scribble, To Kill a Mockingbird. He said, To Kill a Mockingbird, you got it right. How much you bet?
0.
Oh, 0. He's like, that's a great way to play, Hill. So ultimately, I say that story to talk about how essential it is that even though we all get hit with the institutionalized hurdles that come our way all the time, we still need to stay the course, stay in the game. And that's where it comes to getting allies with us in terms of that. If I had someone that would have just walked out to me in the commercial break and said, yo, okay, clearly there's something going on. He's doing something, but just keep on and maybe make more jokes or maybe communicate in a different way. Do something, whatever that is, to take me out of this headspace. That's why connection and other people giving us perspective is essential, right? He finally told me at the end of the show what he does and how he does it. He said that Alex told him the first time he was on the show how to get in. Alex told him the first time he was on the show how to get in. Alex and they're contemporaries. They're from around the same time. So you could see how contemporaries may give other people answers about how to get in the game and win the game. So even though other people may have certain answers and which gives them a competitive advantage, that's no reason to check out of the game. It's the more reason to maybe take your lumps early on, but learn what it is at some point. So after the show was over, he told me. He said, Alex taught me this. He said that the guy who does it is the same guy who's been doing it forever. His whole job in the world, imagine this, your whole job in the world is to press the button after Alex finishes the question. He's probably got a $1 million mansion in Beverly Hills, and all he goes is, okay, that's all he does. But what's interesting about it, he does it with the same rhythm every time. So, if you figure out what that rhythm is, all you have to do is hit your button at the same time. Because I couldn't understand, the light, he'd already rung in before the light came on, but it was simultaneous. So there's no way anybody humanly could see the light and press the button. So he never did that. He listened to Alex say his last word. He counted to, last word. Press the button. Not waiting for the light. He didn't even have to look at the light. He played the rhythm. So there's no way anybody else was going to get in unless they learned that rhythm. So the next time I play Jeopardy, I will use that technique. In fact, I'll stay at home practicing the rhythm. I'll listen to Alex's last word, and I'll hit my remote. Because I can learn that system as long as I know how to win it. And so here's the question. And someone yell it out, and you don't have to wait. This is going to be the fair version of Jeopardy. You don't have to wait till I finish asking the question. Just yell it out when you know it. What's the one small thing that every architect designs into their structure to make their structure successful? A door. Who said that? Well, how old are you? 12. The newest perfect model. A door. He's absolutely right. And the door is really the key piece. Because ultimately, you can create the most beautiful blueprint, have the perfect size foundation, make all the right choices about structure. But if you don't have a door to let people in, it doesn't provide shelter. And the whole purpose of the structure is to provide shelter. And so how does that apply to us in a door? It applies to us that you have to allow people to come into your life. And me on Jeopardy, allow people. I should have invited people. I should have brought them with me and said, every commercial break, you come in and whisper in my ear. I should have brought people along. I should have opened my door and said, I need your help for me to achieve my dream or my goal. I can't do it without you. It also is incumbent, doors let you in and let you out, that as you go, you bring people with you. Through that door, you reach back. Because what happens, the more people you bring with you, it's like creating a wave that gives you a push. And you're bringing all of them with you. And through that momentum, that's when we can start to dismantle those institutions. Because it's only through momentum that the institutions will start to come down. And then the next thing you know, the institutional hurdles are smaller and smaller for groups as you go. Am I making any kind of sense? Okay. So that door piece is essential. And it hardens my heart that many brothers, young brothers you meet, and even young women you meet, you'll do this. How you doing? Nice to meet you. I'm Hill. What's up? Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. What's up? How you doing? Good to see you. Yeah, how you doing? There's none of this. There's no eye relationship. Because what happens is, when you look someone in the eye, and a relationship automatically occurs. Now, she affects me, I affect her, in whatever way that is. And as we affect each other, it creates the opportunity for something bigger than us to happen. Whatever that is, whether that's working together, whether that's an idea, or spurring an idea, or helping her overcome a fear, or helping me overcome a fear, or coming up with a plan, whatever that is, that relationship happens. If you don't actually take someone in and allow them to take you in, there's no way that relationship can happen. And that relationship is the key piece to us ultimately living our own true destiny. Because without those pieces, I get these things in the email, talking about power networking. I mean, you can call it a door, you can call it networking, you can call it relationship building, you can call it friendships, you can call it partnerships. Whatever you want to call it, they're all the same words that talk that there's an inherent power in team building. And many times, our community we again get taught by some institutional pieces that there's only room for one, so we crab in the barrel it. So that team building piece, that door piece, is just as essential as the foundation piece. It's just as essential as the choices piece, the framework piece, and all of that. I want to open up to questions, but I want to make one last real quick point. I talk about false evidence appearing real and how many of us will project false evidence appearing real, our fears, onto others. But it's really important for all of us to really look between the lines, and when we see something that is not right or false evidence, explain it to folks, because not everyone sees it. I was in Atlanta speaking. 100 black men asked me to come down to their national convention and give a keynote address in Atlanta. And different organizations and companies that are noteworthy in Atlanta buy tables. And So Def had bought a table. I didn't know they had bought a table. But, I like Jermaine Dupri. He was actually in Too Deep with me. I really like him. But he wasn't actually there, but people from his camp were there. And I talked about something. That he used to be called Little Bow Wow. Now his name is just Bow Wow. He has a line or a lyric in one of his songs where he says he's under 21 with a black card. What's he talking about? American Express black card, right? It's a credit card that's black It's American Express card that gives you unlimited credit, buying power. But if you really analyze what he's saying, if you really break it down, what he's bragging about is the idea that he could rent the best car from Hertz. Or bragging about the idea that I'm so great, I can give other people my money. And wouldn't it be more interesting or more powerful to brag about Ken Chenault, who's a black man, Harvard Law School graduate, CEO of American Express, and you ask yourself the question, do you want to rent the black card or own the black card? And unless you're owning the credit card company, don't brag about the fact that you can just have a credit card and give someone else your money. But however, we still send out those messages. Kanye West, who is a contributor to my book, extremely intelligent man. I really like him. His first album, it's called College Dropout. Okay? And what's so interesting about that is what Kanye doesn't tell you. What he's talking about in naming his album College Dropout, it's basically a tacit bragging that I can be successful, I can have all this without a college degree, right? That's really what that's saying. It's bragging about dropping out of college. But what he doesn't tell you is that his mother is a college professor. So ostensibly, from the time he was 1 year old, he's been getting a college-level education. So it's completely irresponsible. Because really the title of the album should be College Dropout. Well, my mom was a college professor. Since I was young, I've been learning a lot. So I really didn't need to go to college. Because she taught me all I needed to learn. ... So if your mother's not a college professor, get your ass to college. But that would be a long title for an album. But without that explanation, it's irresponsible. And that's what we have to remember. So when we see things that are irresponsible, we have to have the courage to speak about them in a way that is clear and hopefully eloquent without bashing the person. Because I do like Kanye, and he's intelligent, and I do believe that he understands that message. When I spoke to him, he actually has tried to make up for it in certain ways. Speaking at schools, talking about his history and his journey. And that's all we need to remember about that. In other words, perhaps there are no coincidences in that realm. Because perhaps he's affected more people because it's been brought to his attention to have a discussion about the negative effect of his message. So now he can reach more specifically. I just want to open up to questions real quick or comments. And then I know we have to sign some books, and I know folks have dinners to go to and all that. So let's just, if we can keep the questions coming real quick and answer as many as possible, sure.
I have a question. What was the process that you had to go through to get this done, and was it difficult?
Great question. Question is, what was the process to get this book done, and was it difficult? Here was the process. I was given the intuition of this idea about this book because I go out and speak a lot. I was actually, the day that it really came together, I was actually at Martin Luther King Jr. High School in New York City speaking. And the principal had said, Hill, will you come and speak? I said, sure. I said, give me about 150, 200 students, and I'll do it. And he said, maybe. And I said, maybe? I said, what does that mean? He said, we'll see. I said, we'll see. He said, well, can't you speak to more? And I was like, you know what? When you're speaking to high school students and young folks, you have to do too much patrolling if it gets too big. I'd rather go for quality over quantity. You know, sometimes you can have a more effective, change or effect with a smaller number. There's a reason for that. He said, well, we'll see. I said, okay, whatever. So I go to the school, and I said, well, we're going to the auditorium. They said, no, we're going this way. I said, well, where are we going? He said, we're going to the gymnasium. I walk into the gymnasium, and there are 3,000 students. And I was like, I thought I told you I wanted 200 students. He said, I told you we'll see. So for whatever reason, there was an anointed thing that happened within that gymnasium. It was incredible. Folks were quiet. I didn't have to do too much patrolling. I could do some communicating. Okay? And so after I was done, my big theme about that talk was a lot about the first letter, you, the newest perfect model, which I didn't really get to, that I said I was going to get to, but I kind of touched on it. And that was what I was talking about, self-worth, self-esteem. A young brother comes up to me, and I'm signing a picture. He says, his head's kind of down. He doesn't really make eye contact. He's like, yo, Mr. Harper, can I ask you a question? I say, sure. He says, you sure? I say, sure. He says, you sure? I said, sure. He says, sure. Okay. I said, get ask me the question. He said, well, I'm from a family where no one's ever gone to college. I don't have a lot of money. I'm not very good taking standardized tests. And my grades aren't that good. But you just told me that anything that I want to do, I can do. There's a process to achieving it. You say I'm the newest perfect model. If all of that is true, then how can I go to college? I said, well, there's a specific process. We're going to have to deal with each of those obstacles in a specific way. We're going to have to create different blueprints, read plan, to deal with each. And as we deal with each, we'll get you to college. That can happen. But your question is complex. There's not a soundbite answer I can give you. Go stand over here. We'll talk later. Another young brother comes up and says, yo, Mr. Harper, can I ask you a question? He says, you sure? You sure? I say, sure. He says, you sure? I say, ask the question. He says, it's personal. I said, okay. He said, okay. How come my mother has to bring dudes back to my apartment? It doesn't make me feel good. I said, okay. Now listen, there's a lot of different reasons, and I need to know more about your circumstance and your situation to answer that question and to actually have a discussion with you about it. So there's no soundbite answer I can give you. Go stand over here, and I'll talk to you in a minute. By the time I finished signing these pictures, I had 65 young brothers to my left, each with different issues and questions. And what I began to realize is that there's so many, you're looking in these young men's eyes, there's so many of them with these questions about how to navigate this journey from boyhood to manhood, but nobody in their life to give them answers. I started asking around, I said, where are the counselors for 3,000 students? They had 2. It's barely enough to actually help them fill out a small percentage, any kind of application to even a junior college. I said, well, where's the after-school program? It's all been cut. Where's the arts funding? Cut. Where's the money going? Security. There are fewer teachers, more security guards. Metal detectors. The budget's going to metal detectors. So that's the environment that they're living in. And so my head was spinning. I was like, I got to figure out something to do. And then I feel a tap on my shoulders. I'm walking out. It's a teacher. She says, excuse me, Mr. Harper, can I get a copy of that speech you gave? Because I want to keep teaching this self-esteem piece. And that's when it left my mouth. I said, well, I can email you a copy of the speech, but in a year's time, you'll have something much more comprehensive. And so that's where the book came from. Now, the journey, and I'll answer this real quickly, about getting this published is very interesting. I go to pitch it to the major publishing companies because I wanted to publish it with a major publishing company for a number of reasons. I believe everything about this book is extremely purposeful. Nothing is happenstance. Everything is extremely purposeful. And I had an idea about the way it was going to be, because if I represent to a young brother and say, you're the newest perfect model, you're magnificent, you're brilliant, that means I have to give them something that honors that level of magnificence and brilliance. The emperor wears new clothes for a reason. So therefore, wouldn't it be oxymoronic on my part to say, you're the newest perfect model, here's a cheap book? So everything had to be top end, top level, top quality. And I go to talk about the book, and they say, Hill, many of the publishers, I'm not going to name them, they said, Hill, you're on a TV show that 15 to 20 million people watch a week. You have this education. We'll do a book with you, but not this book. Because they are reading, because they're lying. They are reading. They're reading The Source, Vibe, ESPN the magazine, Double XL, Maxim, King. They're reading blogs on the net. So they read, but you have to publish something that they're interested in reading, okay? And that's where the key piece was. So I said, well, I'm going to find a publisher that I know can understand what I'm trying to do. I thought about a book that I love called The Pact. Who's read that book? It's about 3 young brothers from New Jersey who make a pact when they're young to be doctors. Gotham Books, Division of Penguin, published that book. That's who published my book. Now, this book, again being purposeful, you know, it's got raised gold lettering. I've learned a lot about publishing. See, this isn't cheap. They don't like to do that. But I knew young brothers like bling, so it had to be gold. Young brother gonna love this. You know, sitting next to his baby like, bling, I like that book. So I knew I had to create some carrots. You know, there are 8, in the middle of the book, I knew the young brothers would basically, they start at the back and they flip with their left finger to this. And so I knew they'd get to the pictures first. So they see pictures with me and some of the people that they love. Me and Halle Berry, me and Jay-Z, me and Ludacris. And Again, it's a carrot. It's a subliminal carrot. But publishers don't like to have color pages in the middle of books. It's extremely expensive. Particularly 8 color pages in the middle of a book. They don't want to do that for a market that they claim doesn't exist. But I had to fight this fight to have this book look exactly paper, everything about it. And the most important piece, it had to be a hardcover. And they do not like to create nonfiction books in hardcover for any of us, let alone a young brother, okay? And why? Why did it have to be hardcover? Because, again, respecting the audience. Psychologically speaking, when I'm at home, and I'm sure you've experienced this, you can have a softcover book that's all tattered and torn and the cover's done, and you can throw it away. I have books in my house, if it's hardcover, I can't throw it away. It could be the worst book ever, but for whatever reason, you keep the hardcover book. You do not throw it away. So there's a psychological power to hardcover. And I believe that many of these institutions know this, and that's why they don't necessarily want our truths written in hardcover, because that means the truths won't go away. So whether the young brother discovers the book now, or 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, or it's passed down to his younger brother, or whoever, whatever journey this book makes, it finds whoever was supposed to read it. The other reason why it's in book form and not DVD form, something like that, is because I believe that true change happens, particularly this type of change, when you do specific self-reflection. That's why I was asking everybody to think about themselves. Most of the times we're doing other activities like listening to music or watching TV, DVDs. It's a public activity. We do it with other people. We do it on the phone. We're texting. We're doing whatever we're doing. We're not really doing self-reflection. When we're reading books, for the most part, we do it alone. It's an alone activity. And to actually have an impact, you can do it through the written word in a much more personal way if the person is reading. And that's why many of my books at home are underlined, and there's, because I believe books are interactive. So thank you for that question. We're going to do 2 more. Yes?
Who named you Hill? Where's that name from?
I got the name Hill. My mother was Marilyn Hill from Seneca, South Carolina. My grandfather was Harold Hill from Seneca, South Carolina. My father on my grandfather on my father's side was Harry Harper from Iowa. So you can see there's a lot of H's in my family. And what happened was my uncle was named Frank on my father's side. And the history in the South, and with many Southerners and many folks, is that you name your firstborn son after the father. So he becomes the second, junior, third, fourth. And then the second-born son often takes the mother's maiden name. My father didn't want my name to be Hill, right? That's probably why my parents got. It's endemic of a deeper issue. Okay? He wanted my name, brother's name Harry. My other brother's Harry Harper III. So he wanted my name for his younger brother, Frank, right? So my mom discussed it, argued, blah, blah, blah. So my name on my birth certificate is Frank Eugene Hill Harper. And people call me Hill. Yeah. Okay, wow, that's a big question. Okay, here, it's close enough that she can say it, because the question is so complicated, I don't even know if I can repeat it.
Can you speak on the process of your journey as an attorney, a role model, for youth, a motivator, a spiritual creature, all of those things? Can you speak on how you reconciled the education that you have, your knowledge of the law, and how you have gone about sort of walking forward, walking in that great destiny that you obviously maintain.
Wow. You know, amazing question in terms of journey, and that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about journey in that sense. And what I've realized is that obviously I'm in a profession is something that you don't even need a high school degree to do, let alone 2 graduate degrees, right? And so people say, how does that make sense? And oftentimes we're taught that everything and every activity you do has to have a direct correlation to how you utilize the activity. But life doesn't work that way, ever. We're taught. So that's why we have these disjoints and we get disappointed so easily, because we're like, I did what I was supposed to do and I didn't get this result. Happens in relationships all the time. I acted the way I was supposed to, but the relationship didn't do, because life isn't linear in that way. It's not. And so there are elements, like you said, of spirit belief. God plays such a big part. Our faith, our belief plays such a large part in our journey, along with many other things that are variables. And so that idea of being malleable in the journeys is key. And so part of all of that foundation building has to do with coming to that understanding, being able to be a critical thinker like law teaches you how to do, being able to analyze data or analyze information and be able to decide how points or what points are the valid ones and what points maybe lose weight away. And so in so doing, that's why that's such a key piece for me. I use a law degree in everything I do. I mean, I have businesses and things like that, like the Hotel New Orleans and a restaurant in LA and other businesses, because I do that, and this is one thing, I mean, I really wanted to talk about, but obviously you can't talk about everything, is the wealth factor in our community and how we are not effectively building wealth, legacy of wealth. And so it's so important for me to utilize in whatever way I can to build actual wealth that can be passed down. It's called generational wealth. Because that's one thing that we have never focused on, is generational wealth. And so, you know, because we consume so much of things that aren't generationally specific, things that are ultimately temporary. Because if you ultimately consume things that go away, then you cannot pass them down. So businesses, homes, property, these are things that are generational wealth builders. IRA portfolios, these are things that are generational wealth builders. Cars are not. Jordans are not. So that's part of the idea there. But ultimately, it comes down to, at least for me, really trying to sit in the quiet place and listen. I believe God gives us all intuitive notions of where we should go. But what happens is that many of us over our journey have had these fears projected upon us that allow us, that they basically talk us out of following the intuition. Because since we think linearly, we have to do something that has a linear result. So, I'll give you a quick example. I was at George Mason University. A young woman asked me a question about being in college and all the busyness and how could she follow her intuition if she's busy and she wants to do something. And I just tried to spin a real quick example. Real quick example was, let's say you get hit. And I believe you always should follow your intuition. But you have to know how you're going to parse out your time, right? So let's say that. Thank you very much. Let's say that this thing is angled. I don't know what I can do with this, but I'll put it over here. Let's say that you have an intuition of, you've always wanted to design, let's think of something in like flowers, for whatever reason. If you really didn't judge it, you might sit back and say, you know, design flowers. What does that have to do with my life? I'm a student, or I'm a grad student, I'm a lawyer, I'm a district attorney. Flowers don't fit into my thing. So you let it go, rather than saying, okay, I just got hit with this intuition. I'm not going to allow false evidence appearing real to stop me. I'm not going to allow linear thought to stop me from following it. I'm going to follow it. Now, I have this case that I'm working on, so I can't just quit my case, quit being a DA, and go work in a flower shop. But what I can do is go to a flower shop and say, excuse me, I'm kind of interested in flowers. Would you let me come by the shop for an hour a week? And could I, maybe mop up for you for 20 minutes and then the other 40 minutes watch you arrange the flowers? Or could I help you arrange the flowers? There's something in me that wants to work on flowers. I don't know what it is, but I need to explore that. And you never know what the result can be unless you take the journey. You never know why the intuition has been given to you to follow that. It could be something completely unflower related. It could be that you go in there and you've always wanted to be a consultant, for instance, and you understand the way organizations behave. It could be the fact that you go in to do this flower thing and you're there working on it and you start noticing this woman or the man is operating their small business in not the most efficient way. And you start noticing things that the way they operate their business. And you're still learning about flowers, which is great. And you get the notion then, a new intuition that says, you know what? I'm going to be a consultant for small businesses and how they can run effectively. And you go out and you start learning about being a consultant. And rather than working for McKinsey & Company, some big consultant firm, you set up your own business. And the next thing you know, just because you followed a flower intuition, you're running a consultant business that you started that helps individuals operate small businesses more effectively. But if you never would have followed that intuitive notion in the first place, you never would have found that path. It's non-linear thought, but it's trusting that the intuitive notions you get are the correct ones and not letting fear stop you. Does that make any sense?
It makes sense, but what happens what happened with you when you realize that this is greatness? Didn't that just overwhelm you with anxiety and fear that I'm walking in greater, I have greatness within me. I have greatness within me. And I know that. I know that.
No. See, you're saying, did the idea that having greatness within overwhelm the fact and stop action, like, what do I do? No, because the thing is that all of us have the greatness. All of us are brilliant. All of us are magnificent. Every single person. So greatness and brilliance isn't unique. It's common. The difference is that most individuals allow the fear to stop them from manifesting their greatness, stop them from speaking the truth. So that's why it doesn't become a separate thing. Last question.
Considering your journey and the things that you've experienced, have you thought about maybe writing a follow-up letter to your young sister?
Have I thought about writing a follow-up letter to young sisters considering my journey? Yes, I have. That book would be a very difficult book in a way. Because, be difficult in a way because a lot of the stuff I talk about in this book is universal. I just use examples that hopefully interest and speak to young men. But, I got an email from a father of 2 teenage girls, and he said he bought the book for them because he had started to notice that the young men that they were attracted to dating happened to be young men that aren't making the type of choices that he thinks that they should be looking for in terms of valuation of someone. So he wanted them to read a different perspective of how a young man could be making choices. And if they met a young man that was making choices that are similar to these issues, maybe they would be more interested. So the idea being that universal truths or universal ideas are universal. But I am going to work on it, and I am working on it. And seriously, any of you that are women or you're not women, if you want to send me an email with suggestions of issues or topics I should discuss in the book, feel free to do that. My email's in the book. You can send the suggestions. I'm happy to look at them because as I go through it, I want the book to be different. I don't want it to sound like another book that you may read because it's not coming from a woman. It'd be coming from me. So it'd be my perspective. And so it's we'll see. We'll see. And it's in the process. I want to leave with this last idea. Malachi 3:3 says, he will sit as a purifier or a refiner and purifier of silver. And that's always stuck with me. in an interesting way. And I was told an interesting story about that particular verse. There was a woman that read that verse. And the thing is I'm a big fan of Old Testament, New Testament. I'm a fan of the Quran. I'm a fan of works that provide ancient wisdoms. Because even though we may be the quote-unquote newest perfect model, any great model takes lessons from previous models to create greatness, to create classics. That's what vintage is. It's classic. And this particular woman, she had read this verse, he will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver, and decided that she wanted to do some investigation because her pastor was talking about, you need to investigate verse. Don't just rely on me to tell you what it means. So she found a silversmith that was still refining silver in the old way with fire. So she went to this silver. It was very interesting to me. She sat down and she just watched him, figuring she'd get the answer that way. So she watched him and watched him and watched him and watched him. And she still couldn't figure out what he would do. Is he'd take the silver, he'd hold it in the fire with this long rod, and then at some point that didn't seem very defined to her, he would take the silver and put it to the side, and he'd do it again with another piece. And she was like, how is this working? He said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm refining the silver. She said, well, how are you doing that? He said, well, I'm holding it in the fire. And you have to hold it in the hottest area of the fire, he said, to make it work. And she said, well, why are you doing it? Why do you sit there the whole time? Why don't you just, because it looks like you're just holding it in there, and can't you estimate by the size and the amount of the silver, if you have an even type of level of heat, and then you have the certain size of silver, can't you just have a mechanical element do it based on the time that it needs to be in the hot part, and then it just happens, you could refine a lot more silver than you sitting there doing it by yourself. He said, no, that's not true. She said, it absolutely is true. There should be a way to refine it. He says, no, it's not true. She said, well, what are you doing then? He said, well, I have to watch it the whole time. I can't take my eyes off it. And she's like, why do you have to watch it? He said, that's when I know it's done. And she's like, what do you mean? That's when you'll know it's done. And she's like, well, when do you know it's done? And he said, when I see my reflection in it. And that's true for each of us. We need to see more of our reflections in each other. We need to take each other in more specifically. And if someone else you meet, if their reflection isn't mirroring you, then figure out a way to get involved in their life and have it mirror you. Figure out a way to create a connection so that you see your reflection in them. And then hopefully they have the ability to see their reflection in you. And all of us will start to rise. This woman stood up at one of my talks, and she was really upset when I was talking about involvement. I got deeper into mentorship than I did today. And she was like, you're a jerk. And I said, wow, I'm sorry. And she said, I'm so insulted by you. You're so presumptuous. And I said, well, talk to me. Tell me why. She said, well, I have my own small business. And I have a family, and I'm raising those kids on my own. And I barely have enough time to have time with my kids and run a successful business. And she almost started to tear up. And she said, and you have the audacity to come in front of me and talk about how I have to reach outside of my nuclear family and see some reflections in other people and mentor and do this and do that. You have a lot of nerve. And I said, okay. Let's think about what you can do, because all of us are on different journeys. You don't have to call 1-800-MENTOR. You don't have to be a big brother. You don't have to quit your business and start teaching at the local public school. But you can do something outside of your sphere. She said, what do you mean? I said, do you have a car? She said, of course I have a car. I have to drive to work, don't I? I was like, okay. I said, well, ma'am, do you take the highway to work, or how do you get to work? Is your business on the highway? Where is it? She said, of course my business isn't on the highway. I said, well, you do take streets? She says, well, I take the highway first, and of course there are exits on the highway. I have to take a street to get to my business. I said, okay. I said, well, when you drive down that street, when you get off the exit, are there people on the street? She said, of course there are people on the street. I need foot traffic to make a business successful. I said, okay. I said, well, will you do this for me? Will you buy 10 copies of a book? I said, it could be my book. It could be somebody else's book. It could be any book. It doesn't matter. Put it behind your seat. And when you're driving to work, and you see a young man with a white t-shirt that's a little too big and a fake gold chain that's a little too large, or you see a group of young people, a young woman or whoever that should probably maybe be in school at the time or is just hanging out talking, you pull over to the side. You reach behind your seat. You get out of the car. You walk up to them. You actually look them in the eye, and you say, young man, young woman, I love you. I care about your future. Here's a gift from me. Don't worry, they're not going to hurt you. Give them the gift. Get back in your car, drive away. It would take around 45 seconds on your journey to work. And you do that, and you don't know the effect you can have, and you still reached outside. And I really hit her with it. I kept coming. I made her promise me she would do it. I got an email from her that said she did it. And I thought she was going to email me like in her same tone, you know. But it was a completely different tone. And this is when we talk about seeing our reflections in other people, because when you see a reflection in somebody else, not only do you affect them, they affect you. And what was amazing, she said her business, number one, has never been better. Number two, she said that from doing this relationship, she decided to allow and invite students to come and visit her business. And now there's a young person that really liked it, and now they come once a week and work there. And she never thought that she'd have the time, the energy, or even the desire to experience someone outside of her circle. But it works if we take that first step. That's all it takes, is that first step. In a real, genuine, honest way. Which means looking somebody in the eye and basically saying, I love you. Because one thing I found, that I meet a lot of young men, and I ask them this question. I'll leave you with this. I ask them this one question. It's a very simple question. How many times in your life has an elder male looked you in the eye and said, I love you? And it really breaks my heart to say this, and it hurts me. 9 times out of 10, this young man will say 0 in their life. An older African-American male looking at them in their life, mind you. They hear from their mothers and women in their life all the time, baby, I love you, baby, I love you, baby, I love you. Do they hear it from the men? And so therefore, it's incumbent upon us, even if we're a single mom or a sister or whatever, to find men. It doesn't have to be a dating relationship. To say I love you to somebody. I love all you all. Good night. Thank you.